The senior Met police officer responsible for writing the force's anti-drug policy has been sacked after refusing to take a drug test. Commander Julian Bennett has been found guilty of gross misconduct after a 3-year saga during which he was suspended on full pay. Bennett has confirmed he would appeal against the decision. Joining me live is Rick Pryor, Vice Chairman of the Metropolitan Police Federation. Rick, hello. I mean, this really is an astounding story, isn't it? What do you know of what happened?
Well, good evening, Vanessa. Thank you for having me. Yes, it is. It's incredibly embarrassing for the Metropolitan Police for an officer of this seniority, given, as you've already alluded to, given he was the in charge of the Met Police's drug policy, and also given that through much of his career he presided over gross misconduct hearings himself, where he decided the fates of numerous officers, sacking many of them. So that in itself is exceedingly embarrassing. But what is of more concern to me and the members I represent is the fact that this officer has been allowed to drag this out for over 3.5 years, sitting at home on his large salary at taxpayers' expense, when he should have been dealt with much more expediently through the processes that are already in place for when this type of offence is committed.
Totally get it. You know, how can it possibly have taken 3 years? Absolutely. But the question, I suppose, people might be wondering is, how do you drag something out? Surely, if you're the person who is in charge of the police's anti-drugs policy, or the drug czar of the police, you then refuse to take a drug test. How are you the person that gets to call the shots, or as you put it, drag it out? How do you get to be in charge of what goes on next? Why isn't it the police who are in charge?
Well, I'll give a little bit of context. I'll answer that question, but I'll give a little bit of context. He was required to give what's called a with cause drug test. That means that there was intelligence to suggest that he may have been taking illicit drugs. So he was required to do that. At the point that he refused, the offence, the gross misconduct offence of failing to provide a sample when required, is complete. It's what's, I mean, I don't need to tell you about words. I know you're very wordy, Vanessa. It's what's called incontrovertible evidence in the police. There is no argument that that offence was complete. And that's the only offence, to my understanding, that he was found 3.5 years later on. And there's what's called an accelerated misconduct hearing within the police conduct regs that's already there, that's already available to be utilised, that many other more junior ranked officers are placed on when this type of thing happens. Where he should have been sacked within weeks and at the most a couple of months of his refusal to take this test.
So what do we know about why this didn't happen, why it was so infinitely prolonged? Because I believe it's cost the taxpayer about £1.5 million.
It's cost an absolute fortune, yes. And knowing what he knows around police misconduct, he must have been every day thanking his lucky stars that he was still employed for those 3.5 years, still drawing an enormous salary at taxpayers' expense. I did put that question to the current commander of the DPS in a recent roadshow that was on for serving officers.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I put the point to him, the exactly same point I've just made, and he shrugged his shoulders and said he agreed with me. He thought that he should have been on an accelerated misconduct hearing. And when I pushed him further and said, well, why wasn't he placed on that gross misconduct hearing? I don't think he really knew. He sort of alluded to the fact he had a very good KC who was representing him. But,
and is there any likelihood of him being charged with any drugs offences? Because there are all sorts of stories about the drug use he's supposed to have indulged in.
Well, I've not read the finding, but it's my understanding that the only offence that was proven was the refusal to take the test, which was the piece of evidence we knew that was incontrovertible right at the start of this process, which I've already alluded to, should have ended his career within 2 months of him refusing that test.
How unusual do you think it is to have a police officer in a senior position with callous and casual disregard of the law and the laws that that person is himself supposed to be enforcing and making sure that other people adhere to and stick to? How frequent is this kind of behaviour in the police force, would you say?
Well, I would hope that it's exceedingly rare. And our police leaders, have to lead by example. I saw Assistant Commissioner Gray's press release, or the statement that she made, and I would agree fully with her. There's a responsibility on all police officers, but perhaps even more so the more senior of ranks, to lead by example. And this hasn't happened in this case, and as I've said, I hope it's a one-off. Well, not a one-off. It wouldn't be a one-off, but I hope it's very limited in the scope that it is.
All right, Rick. Thank you very much indeed for joining
Interestingly,
us. We appreciate it. Good to see you on the programme.